All right, and we are live with another episode of Mentor Minutes. Thrilled to be here. If you have any questions, drop them down into the comment section. If you're tuning into this through the podcast, YouTube, do the same thing. I go back to prior episodes and make sure that if there's any questions I didn't get a chance to get to, that I get them on the next episode of Mentor Minutes. You can also, if you want to keep anonymity, email me, cm@cameronmorsey.com, or private message me on Facebook, and we'll go ahead and get your question answered in a way that, well, keeps that anonymity for you. So I'm going to fire away with one I didn't get a chance to get to in yesterday's live session here on Facebook, and it's from Sandy, and it's, how do you deal with employees dealing with grief in the workplace? And when we talk about, say, mental health issues, I don't want to say grief is the easiest one, but it's the one that most companies actually have a policy already set in place for, even if they don't have necessarily a support structure for it. And that is, you give them what you are supposed to give them first and foremost. So whether that is, bereavement time, whether that is access to counseling, make all of those tools available to the employee. But the biggest thing when we start talking about grief in particular is being human. I've had employees that didn't want to take any bereavement time when a loved one passed away. And I've had employees that took 2 weeks before they came back. You avail yourself of whatever options you can. So if they have 3 days of bereavement, give them 3 days of bereavement. Then give them the option of taking vacation. I don't care if you don't have anybody to cover them. This is about being human. This is going to pay off in the long run. And that's so much when we talk about these mental health things. Be human. Take yourself out of the boss role for just a minute and be human. And what you're going to find is that there is a place for work at some point. And what you can do is, as a friend, encourage them when we talk about the person that was out for 2 weeks. Peter, so good to see you here. When we talk about a person that's out for 2 weeks, I'm encouraging them after 2 weeks, hey, you've got to get rolling again. You've got to get something in your mind except for, what was lost or the issues that you're dealing with. And so that's from a friend role just as much as a business role. Now, if you exhaust their vacation time, then let them take unpaid time off. You know what? You need to make sure that your person is right. You don't want to bring somebody back into the operation who is dealing with personal issues because they're not going to be productive. Great, you've got the body there, but are they actually doing what you want them to do? So when we talk mental health, when we talk about dealing with grief, be human first, be their boss second, and you are far more likely to be making the correct decisions, not only for the employee, not only for yourself, but for the organization itself as well. So great question, and I wish I had a chance to get to it yesterday. Next one I got privately through email today, and that was, what if you lose your purpose? So we talk about purpose as a motivating factor for employees. When we talk about needing to motivate, make them feel like they're important. Make them feel like what they do is important. But personally, if you start losing your sense of purpose, your sense of importance, what I often tell everybody is your career is just one component of your life. You have a ton of relationships. You've got, mental things, mind, body, spirit, of those sorts of things. Talking about relationships. When you lose your sense of purpose at work, this is where I recommend leaning on your personal time. Leaning on the life aspect of the work-life balance. What passions can you get back into in your personal life? What hobbies have you let slip? It could be hiking. It could be biking. It could be chess. It could be reading more. It could be going out. When you lose your sense of purpose at work, it is often a symptom of just unhealthy balance in your mind. And where I look to address that first is making sure that the other aspects of your life are in order. And what happens is when you get those aspects in life in order, it gives you new insight into your career and what you might be interested in as far as a purpose moving forward. Now, you can, get in touch with what would happen if you weren't there. These are exercises that you can go through in finding the purpose of your team as well. Ask yourself, what happened if I disappeared? Or what happened if my department disappeared? What would happen to the operation? That reasserts that sense of importance. Why am I here? What do I like doing? You do these exercises, write them down on a piece of paper. You can go through that, but really when you feel like you've lost your sense of purpose, I recommend addressing it from the free time aspect. And I think that you find that after a few weeks, month, maybe a couple of months, whatever it is, when you re-excite some of those passions outside of work, you're going to find that you have a better perspective on what your passions and what your purpose are inside of work. Love that question. Love that question. So as we've had people jump on here, if you have any questions, drop them down into the comment section. I'll go ahead and handle them live here on Facebook. And again, for those people that tune in late on this, feel free, drop them down into the comment section. I check these before I jump on to the next session, or just email me, cm@cameronmorsey.com. Next one is, how does an employee handle a supervisor manager treating that person with little respect in front of the rest of the team when there's no HR department in place and there are no managers available to assist? This form of negative treatment is consistently happening within the organization, and the rest of the team doesn't want to get involved for fear of the same treatment being bestowed upon them. That's one of those difficult situations where you don't want to be in that position, but I almost want to say that the position that you're in is almost a good position because you're taking one for the team at this point. The biggest issue, the biggest problem with being beat down or somebody always focusing on the negative in your behavior is the impact that it has for the relationships around you, with your peers, with other, peers of your boss, with your boss's boss, that sort of thing. But if you're in a situation where everybody recognizes that that is unfair treatment, then how you handle it actually becomes a feather in your cap. So I want you to keep a level mindset in regards to this. Don't get emotional in regards to it. I want you to try to take positives from the negatives. That's going to demonstrate a couple of different things. It's demonstrating a level of maturity to your peers who are also in these meetings. Wow, Cameron's taken his hit on that and he's spinning that into a positive thing that he can do in that. So look for those positive insights. There's a kernel of truth in almost every one of those negatives. All right, I'm not saying they're all truthful, but there's a kernel of truth and there's something that you can take from it and something that you can work on. Also, when your boss sees that the negative is leading to a positive outcome, all right, I want to say it almost detracts from their willingness to exhibit that sort of negativity towards you in the future, because they feel like they're punishing to a certain extent. But when you spin that into something positive that can be worked on, they're not getting the result that they're expecting. And so hopefully that dials it back. But also what you're doing is you're changing the course of the discussion. And again, this is very difficult and it's going to take some practice to try to find that kernel of positive, or that kernel that it leads to an action. Because so much of the negativity is just, hey, what went wrong, and not talking about the action steps to recover from that. And so I want you to play the mature, the big person role in this. Most of the negative effects are washed away because everybody sees the unfairness of it. And that's what that turns into, is an opportunity for you to be mature and to demonstrate leadership for everybody around you. And I think as you continue to kind of lean into that, this isn't fun, don't get me wrong, but as you continue to try to lean into that, what you're going to find is there's an opportunity for you to grow, not only in your career, but in the respect that you get from everybody else that's around you. Boss, so good to see you here. Yes, and I'm glad you tuned into it. Dorth, good to see you here as well from Germany. Sorry about the Mexico match in the World Cup. I did catch that. Any advice on how to start a discussion on having a sabbatical? If this is not common part of the company culture, especially having the back door to get back to the job after this. You know what? You throw out the feelers, Dorth. If your company doesn't have any sort of history of a sabbatical, it can be difficult to get that across to get it approved. So throw out some feelers. Have you ever heard? Talk to your boss. Your first ally is going to be your boss in regards to a sabbatical. Your next ally could be the HR department. And what you're simply going to ask is, has anybody in this department or in this company ever taken a sabbatical before? Have you ever heard of something like that? And just throw it out there. If it's never happened, and if people are unfamiliar with the concept, then you've got some more groundwork to put into place. And in those cases, you then lead with, well, what if I was able to take a month off, 2 months, 3 months, whatever sabbatical you're talking about here. They extend out to full years that people take off for sabbaticals. What would be your main concerns in regards to that? So throw out the possible question at first, whether they've heard of it, so you kind of have a lay of the land, and then ask them what their concerns would be in regards to it. That gives you your homework to start addressing some of those concerns. And then once you've been able to address some of those concerns, then you kind of ask, well, is this something that we can do? Okay? Because what you don't want to do is you don't want an environment where HR, your boss, their boss, are unfamiliar with the concept of sabbaticals, haven't experienced it in the workplace, and have a whole lot of misplaced concerns in regards to it. And so you ask, and they immediately say no, because they've got all of these concerns in their heads. So get a lay of the land, find out what their concerns are, address the concerns, and then you roll it out. I wish you the best of luck. It's a tough thing to get into place in a lot of organizations if they aren't already on board with that whole concept. But it is something, as you know, that is extraordinarily valuable. Great question, Doris. Let me know if you have any follow-ups in regards to that. Drop them down in the comments and we can kind of carry forward with that discussion. Next question I have, and I think most everybody out there can kind of sympathize with this, and I understand now why this one was anonymous, and that is, how can I deal with an unorganized boss? You don't want that one in the comment section of Facebook. The big thing, and I talk about this, I try to talk about this a lot, and that is, every leader has strengths and weaknesses. You have strengths and weaknesses. Your boss has strengths and weaknesses. And it's our job as good employees, as good peers, as good friends, to look for ways to minimize those weaknesses in everybody that's around us, our peers and our boss. So if you have a boss that is unorganized, think about the fall Mexico deserved it. Yeah, that was a tough game, but don't worry, a few more to play there, Dorth. So if you're talking about an unorganized boss, my first question is, what are ways that you can help them get organized? Usually it is just a few simple things that you can put into place to get that organization together. A question, hey, do you have the agenda yet for that? In many cases, this is an opportunity for you to step in and help, which gives you more exposure and the access to more experiences and projects and that sort of thing. Don't have an agenda for the meeting? Do you want me to put one together for you? Hey, remember you've got that 10 o'clock. Do you have something that you need me to do in the meantime so that you can make that 10 o'clock meeting? Little things. You know, a disorganized boss is frustrating on a huge level, but it's also something that is almost an easy opportunity for you to assist. It doesn't take a whole lot to kind of organize things and get things prioritized by just simply asking those questions. So when you have a disorganized boss, that's an opportunity for you to step in, ask clarifying questions if they're kind of all over the map with their priorities. If you feel like they're going to miss something, then ask to be able to help out with it. Can I put the agenda for you? Can I send that out? Do you need me to print it off for you? All of those little things. And what you'll find is there are only a few triggers that take care of this. Disorganization is a classic 80-20 situation where you can put 20% of the effort in and get 80% of the benefit. There's usually only a few triggers or a few habits that a disorganized leader has that can flip the whole thing around and turn them from disorganized into relatively organized in pretty short fashion. So that would be my encouragement. When you have a boss who is disorganized, help them out. If you have a boss that has focus issues, help them out with that. If they have a weakness as far as micromanagement, look for ways to help them out. Recommend that they do scheduled updates as opposed to micromanagement. If you have a boss that doesn't delegate well, try to find ways to take something off of their plate, something small, so that they can go ahead and build those delegation strengths, build that delegation weakness into a strength. All of those things can help, and that's your role as an employee, is to help your boss be a better leader and be more efficient and effective in their role for the organization and for yourself. And there's an opportunity to demonstrate leadership when you do that, and that's why I think it's just such a huge opportunity when you see that sort of problem in somebody. Next question I received offline was, do we as leaders expect too much from our teams in terms of buy-in? Isn't the starting point that they work for a business that expects certain standards, and as an employee I will expect adherence to that? Then once they see it for themselves, the buy-in follows. I love that question. Do we expect too much as far as buy-in is concerned? And I think it got me thinking, the question itself got me thinking about using buy-in is almost a cheat for so much stuff in leadership. If we can get their buy-in, then I don't have to lay out the expectations. Because I believe there's a place for both of those things. Yes, when we talk about accountability, the first thing is, what are the expectations? What is good performance? What's satisfactory performance? What's bad performance? Does everybody know what those things are? And so there is a marching order aspect to it. However, and that's a foundation. I really do believe that those expectations are a foundation. However, if you want to build anything on top of that foundation, you're going to need more. That expectation went out decades ago. People expect more from their work. They derive meaning from the work that they do and from the workplace that they're in. And then what that requires is, that does require more buy-in. So you set that foundation with expectations. But if you want to build higher and higher and higher on top of that, you will need to get into buy-in. And that gets into, why are you asking them to do it? Why is it important? Getting their feedback so that they can establish some ownership, starting that dialogue. Those are all things that help you build better performance on top of your organization. Because yes, the expectation is there, but you don't work with robots. Maybe you do, but you wouldn't need to listen into this very much if you did. But you don't work with robots, you work with humans. So you'll get that baseline, that foundational productivity. But if you want to build more, you're going to need to work on those things that get you buy-in. Whether you call it buy-in or not, or whether you just call it proper employee engagement, is up to you, but you will need to get there at some point. And next question I have is, what should I do as a supervisor if someone in my team is super quiet and reluctant to ask questions and not willing to interact with other teammates? I told this person that communication is the key in this team, but seems like he doesn't change his behavior so far. Great question. There are personality types, and I love that, communication is key in this team. That's fantastic, except that a certain, I don't know what the percentage is, 10%, 15%, 20% of the population is introverts. So they're not going to want to step out. They're not comfortable stepping out. They may even have the ability. There's plenty of people that have the ability to speak and speak very well, but they don't because they don't like it. They're not comfortable with it. So I like that you set that tone, but if you want to bring somebody out of their shell, if you have introverts, and almost everybody has those quiet team members that are out there, put them on point. Ask them questions. Now, you can be respectful. It depends on your environment. You can call them out in a meeting. Cameron, well, what do you think of this? Well, Cameron, what would you suggest in this particular situation? So you're bringing them into the discussion. It's great meeting etiquette for everybody that's out there. If you have people that are quiet in a meeting, call on them. Bring them into the discussion. You can do the same thing in the workplace outside of a meeting. Cameron, what are your thoughts in regards to this? I need help in regards to this. What are your ideas? What problems do you see? Those sorts of things. So bring them in through questions. Now, you can start small. So you can start as a one-on-one sort of discussion so they get more comfortable with you. And then maybe you bring one more person into that discussion and they get more comfortable with that. And then pretty soon you're able to bring them into a stand-up with the whole team and go around and ask people for questions. Let them know it's okay. Build up their comfort level with talking with more than just one person with conveying their ideas and knowing they're not going to get shot down. And then realize this is a challenge on your behavior and how you deal with that communication as well. Is how you as the leader respond to ideas, to communication. Are you doing so in a way that fosters more of it? Are you being respectful? Are you being level-headed? Are you giving credit where credit is due? These are all things that foster more of that. So make sure that you are getting your ducks in a row while you help build up this person's comfort level with talking with more people. It's actually almost the reverse. I'll draw a correlation here. When people had come to me with issues in regards to public speaking, I tell them, if you have an issue talking in public, I want you to get one person. And I want that person be somebody that you trust, somebody that you like, and I want them to sit across from your desk. And I want you to spend 5 minutes telling them about something that you know a lot about in the organization. Make it work related, but explain a report that you just put together and what's important on it. Then when you get more comfortable with that, then bring 2 people in. And then take it to a different environment and have a stand-up where 3 people and you're talking about the report that you're giving. And then pull them into a meeting room and talk to 8 people about it. And you just build those muscles and build that comfort level in public speaking. And that's what takes people, beyond those fears that they have. Just a little bit farther, just one step. Not talking in front of 250 people in an auditorium, you're going to freak out. Take some intermediary steps in between, and that's going to help you get more comfortable and build up some of those strengths that you need to speak publicly. And it works exactly the same way as far as bringing people out of their shell. Patty, so great to see you here. I'm going to give about 15 seconds. If you got any questions, drop them down into the comment section. I will encourage everybody, if you haven't signed up for the podcast, it's a great way to take these things on the road and just give your leadership mind some exercise. Talking through some of these issues. It may be issues you're familiar with. It may be issues that don't necessarily apply right now. But the thought process of taking leadership principles and leadership theory and putting them into practice is something that applies to a whole bunch of different topics that you do deal with every day. And hey, who knows? The thing that doesn't affect you today could be the issue that crops up in your organization tomorrow. So with that being said, I'm going to sign off. Everybody have a great day out there. Patty, you in particular, I'm heading over to the East Coast for a conference tomorrow. So I will at least be in your time zone. Patty, I do go live, I want to say generally in the morning, Pacific Standard Time. I keep it flexible just because my calendar kind of jumps around just a little bit with private coaching sessions and some other things that I have going on. So I don't have set times as of yet. I may go that route at some point, but I like to keep the flexibility there. Eliana, great to see you here from Jordan. If you or anybody else that's tuning in have a question, drop it down in the comment section. I'm going to sign off for today, but I will handle it at the top of the next episode tomorrow. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.